everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation, along with my ever-creative, sometimes uber-quiet wifey, Jessica Lee. If you've ever struggled with getting outside of your comfort zone, then we have the Overcoming Insecurities show for you. Today we'll talk about challenging ourselves to put ourselves out there, get out of our shells, and step toward our greatest, brightest selves, even when filled with fear and doubt. That, plus we'll talk about psychic mediums, remote healing, the creative process, wrestling with chairs, becoming a social butterfly, Inspire Nation babies, and why in the world there's 10,000 kitties sitting behind me. Gotcha. So welcome back to the show, Jessica. Are you ready to shine?
After a month and a half off, I think I'm finally ready.
Woohoo! So do we start with the month and a half off, or do we start with why there are 10,000, it appears to be on YouTube anyway, 10,000 kitties, Japanese bobtails that is, sitting behind me?
Well, Japanese bobtails have a special place in my heart because we used to have one in Bam Bam. Mm-hmm. And I get to pick the images that show up on the green screen behind you, and I needed something to raise my vibration. Well, and I came across this image, and it made me laugh.
It's perfect. It's slightly emasculating, but hey, I've got the pink shirt, the kitties behind me. It's all good.
Well, it's not Hello Kitty.
No, close. It's like Bammy. It's okay. Enough said. So, on that note,
hey, you chose the color shirt, though. You chose the pink shirt.
I did. I don't know, something about it worked really well, and our green screen is really, really finicky, and so we know this shirt holds the screen stable at the moment. But I'm feeling very heart open lately, so it seems somehow appropriate.
You know, the whole topic of the green screen kind of falls in line with the theme of the show today.
And that theme is?
Stepping out of your comfort zone.
Oh my God. So I have a 2-hour countdown before a show of what I like to do when, a checklist, everything, like I'm a pilot, like I'm an astronaut, and I have everything detailed. And what's been happening with the green screen is somewhere in that 2-hour period, usually about an hour to go, you come into the room, there's lights on, there's lights off, there's lights being angled, there's screens being changed. And it's definitely taken me way outside of my comfort zone at a time where I'm trying to get centered and drop in and do final prep for the interview. Instead, the studio is kind of flipped upside down and backwards. And while I'm not exactly inviting that energy in, I have had to step out of my comfort zone and get comfortable with that while I'd rather get centered.
You're not the only one that's uncomfortable during this process. And in my defense, I step in way before an hour beforehand. But what I've discovered is that when I'm sitting in front of the green screen, setting everything up for my body and my height and my shiny black hair, which actually reflects a lot of light back onto the green screen and changes everything, has a much different effect, and it needs different settings than when you're sitting there. So yesterday I set everything up and it was working perfectly for me. And then an hour before your show, you came in and sat down and everything fell apart.
Yes, which led to my stepping outside of my comfort zone. But it's working. It's working, and it's a great challenge, and I think it will help take our show. You know, it's in a sense a bell and a whistle, but it's beyond that. It's helped setting setting the energy, setting the stage. So I think it's powerful for that. And I think it will be helpful in the long run. So it does take getting a bit uncomfortable now. And that really is the theme today, is how can we put ourselves out there on the edge to stretch ourselves and to challenge ourselves for growth.
And, you know, it's not just uncomfortable during the process of getting things set up, but if you've been watching on YouTube, and if you're detail-oriented or if you look closely, you'll see that sometimes the image on Michael's side falls apart because things weren't set up properly. And we're just running with it. We're letting go of perfection. The other day, you got a new camera in, and you had two cameras set up on the monitor, and by accident, the wrong camera was on.
Yes, which led to me looking like I was looking kind of off to the side to the guest the whole time. She handled it well, and I'm sure we'll discuss more about her interviews, Kim Russo, in a little bit. But everything was telling me that the right camera was on. But that's not even me. I've been in television studios before, and they have half a dozen cameras on you, usually with a light above one. But there are some top pros out there who've looked at the wrong camera.
Yeah, and as a former or recovering perfectionist, it's hard for me to look at that video because I loved the interview itself. The interview was one of my favorites. And then there's just this little thing that most people probably aren't going to notice or going to be bothered by, which is you looking off to the side the whole time. And it's just part of the process that there are going to be quote unquote mistakes and failures. And you just have to keep going. I mean, I'm sure there are a couple of times when both of us are thinking, maybe we should just give up on this green screen thing because it doesn't seem like we're getting things right. We seem to make 2 steps forward and then maybe a step back and then another step forward and then 2 steps back. And
I'm not feeling the confidence at the moment. But no, I know it's for our best. And we've got some, blazing lights in here, spotlights on me or box lights. And it's way more stuff going on than I'd like. But I think once we get it dialed, it'll be worth it. And if you're not continuously pushing yourself forward, and I do it in a kind, gentle, easy, good manner, but if you're just sitting back and cruise control, I don't think you're learning. I'm not sure you're living. So it's good to continuously challenge ourselves. And there is the dreaded B word, which we certainly don't want to go there with that one, because when you say that, things fall on your head.
You might have to spell it out for people, though.
You never want to say B-O-R-E and the letter that begins the word David. Because when you do, not so comfortable things happen. But much better to challenge yourself rather than ask the universe to begin challenging you. So it's a funny thing when coaching clients come to me and use that word, funny things happen, which is also why when coaching clients come to me and they said, I'm feeling like I'm ready to start a new job, to get a new occupation, I'm not sure exactly where I want to go, then all of a sudden they tend to be liberated in the most beautiful way, because the universe goes, your wish is my command. Let's help you get to that next stage in life. So I like to choose those words a little bit carefully.
And by liberated, you mean you can spell this one out too if you're afraid to say it.
Let's just say you might be given freedom, which in the long run is huge, is awesome, is such an incredible positive. It's just when we put those things out there, they often happen sooner than we expected, because in our hearts we're ready. And the universe knows when in the heart we're ready and says, well, although we had a show about this weeks ago about pulling the bandage quickly versus pulling it slowly, it in this case helps pull the bandage quickly to give us the freedom to find something that suits us much better. And that's what we're doing here with the green screen, is we're stretching ourselves for something better.
And I would I wouldn't argue. I would say that if you're liberated in that way, and maybe it's been a few months already or longer that you've been ready to move on, but haven't for whatever reason.
Absolutely. And that gets again to today and stepping outside of your comfort zone. There's that fear, there's that insecurity, there's that, am I comfortable putting myself out there? What's going to happen? And the list goes on and on and on. And the universe it really is a truly loving, beautiful, supportive place when we put ourselves out there. And when we don't put ourselves out there, the universe doesn't criticize or judge. It just, starts to up the volume and up the volume, and then it gets a rubber hose, and then it gets a 2x4, and it makes things progressively more uncomfortable until we choose what we could have done in the beginning to put ourselves out there.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about the YouTube channel and what's been going on with that, which is nothing really extraordinary. It's doing wonderful. It's been growing at a steady pace. So there's more views each month. There are more subscribers each month. There are more comments each month. Yet we're challenging ourselves. We're asking, how can we make it even better? And that's where the green screen came into play. And then we've been toying with chopping up the videos because people on YouTube generally like to watch shorter clips. And right now our interview is about an hour long, and the average viewer likes something more like 15 minutes long. And it's a little scary when you start messing with something that seems to be working just fine. You know, it's kind of like that saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Well, it ain't broke. I wouldn't say we're trying to fix it. We're trying to make it better.
Well, we're gonna have on Mo, if I'll pronounce his last name right, Gaudat, on happiness on Monday, and he's the chief business officer for Google X. And Google X, the X stands for 10xing, which means to exponential growth, which means you need to wipe the slate clean, and then you need to leap in there. And he says, fall in love with the problem, not the product. And if we were to fall in love with the problem, in quotes, of our show, is I think for the amount of effort that we're putting in, a lot more people can be enjoying this if we tweak the format. Mm-hmm. And so I'm challenging us, and you're challenging us, how do we 10x this? How do we step outside of our own box, which is one of the most difficult things to do, to get out of your own paradigm, to say, what can we do to really jump this ahead? And I think one of those pieces, certainly having a more pro background is huge. But then I think slicing things up, and I picture like when I watched The Voice, NBC's The Voice on YouTube. And it would be hard to find the main program. It existed, but it'd be hard to find. Actually, I think you had to go to the NBC.com to find the full video. But what they did is slice it up into 5 or 6 minute clips of key topics, of key segments, so that you could get right in there and say, I want to learn from Brian Tracy about time management. Whoop. I want to learn from Derek Rydell about intention work. Whoop. And you can go right to these little things. And that excites me to make it a lot more digestible for people. And we've been going back and forth on this, whether we need the full video, because there are those people, we want to make everyone happy, who love sitting down to the whole thing, pressing play, letting it roll, or how we get it into digestible pieces. But I see that as a big, important piece for the future, as do I see social media, something that I admit I've never fully embraced, shall we say, but some way that people can easily share the videos and little snippets with their friends of wow, Michael and Jessica put up this amazing meditation. You've got to check this out. Or Judah on the drums, taking people on a shamanic journey. You got to watch this. How we can do that. Mm-hmm. So let me back us up for a little bit, if it's all right. You disappeared for 6 weeks. Where'd you go?
Well, first we were packing, and then we were moving, and then we were unpacking and getting life organized again. And I guess the unpacking, we still have lots of things in boxes that will probably stay in boxes for a while. But I think the unpacking process probably ended about 2 weeks ago. But I had been off the bandwagon, so to speak, for a month at that point already. And I guess I was waiting for a nudge or a kick in the ass.
And before we get to the kick in the proverbial ass there, it seems like the doubt, this is something we all experience. When you step away from it, the doubt starts to creep back in.
Well, the old programming, which has been in play much longer than the new programming that I'm putting in, was saying things like, and this is nothing new, but it was saying things like, oh, those people who say they really like your shows, they're just like they're they're the minority. They're really supportive and really compassionate people are just trying to say nice things to you, make you feel better. And everybody else does not find any value in your shows. And when I say your shows, I mean the shows that you and I record.
So basically, every single one of my coaching clients who has said, I love Jessica on the mic, they're just being nice.
Well, see, the brain goes, well, they've self-selected themselves. They're
It's amazing how our brains can do that. You would think there would be a default mechanism which would say how genuinely great we are, how special we are, how loved we are. And instead, maybe it's from our social programming going up, but instead it goes to look to prove why we're a fraud.
you want to hear something else that's entertaining?
Sure.
Well, so the more time that passed, the less comments there would be about our shows together. And I'm like, okay, so people are starting to forget. So if they're starting to forget, then it must not have had that big of an impact. And, there was no like hard feelings about it. It was just like, oh, like my brain just like trying to reason what was happening. And I guess it wasn't feeling bad about it because it had no attachment in wanting to continue.
Oh no, this was in your in some sense you felt your better interest. I get to be quiet and not be on the mic if people have forgotten about me. Score.
Yeah. So then, and I kept thinking to myself, okay, there was a part of me that knew it would be time to get back on the mic soon. But I was in no hurry.
So can we segue from there to the, as you put it, kicking?
Sure.
Well, we had a show with Kim Russo, the Happy Medium, and she had a show on mediumship on Lifetime Movie Channel called The Haunting of ... is the name of her show. And she came on, and I had no intention to do a reading with her. We've had on mediums in the past, and on top of Paul Selig, and we absolutely love Paul Selig. But I didn't really feel like going on the can you do a reading on me kind of thing. Although a series of synchronicities came up in reading her book, and I was like, well, I just want to know who my guides are. I want to ask who my guides are. And I talked with you about it, and you also said, well, make sure if you ask about the guides, ask about baby. And so I'm like, okay, we'll do that. And so about halfway through, I asked her about guides. And it was absolutely hilarious because her jaw dropped as she saw like this throng of Asian guides behind me. And then she went right from there, boom, into talking about you.
Yeah, which is so interesting because for many years, whenever we had opportunities like this, you were the focal point. All the discussion or the healing or whatever was being done would be on you. And I was kind of like this side piece.
And this time you were the centerpiece. You were what she actually got so heated about it that she was apologizing, saying, I'm not trying to, I don't know if the word, it wasn't criticize, but something along those lines, or I'm not trying to yell at Jessica, but the guides are extremely adamant here and have a very strong message to get to her. And since you've replayed it probably a couple times, what was the message they were sharing with you?
Well, that I needed to stop making excuses and stop hiding behind the monitor, I think is what she said. And she didn't say I necessarily needed to get back on the mic, but I needed to be out front and center on stage, so to speak, side by side with you. And she used the phrase, dynamic duo, which we've used before. At least you have.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. I had book note. I was like, that's an interesting term. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I had forgotten we did use that term before.
And she said that she noted that I think she said I'm very vulnerable and that I have insecurities. And then she corrected herself or added many insecurities. She said she has many insecurities. And I'm listening to this and I'm thinking, she just told the whole world I have many insecurities. I'm a very insecure person. And I'm like, yeah.
Well, it's good that you didn't freak out and say, Michael, pull them back, edit, chop.
I was like, I do. That's me. Well, temporarily. And then I thought, so do a lot of other people out there. And maybe the majority of people have a lot of insecurities. And I think her point was, she didn't say it outright, but reading between the lines, I think my willingness or ability to be vulnerable and share my insecurities helps people relate. She also mentioned that my voice has a certain frequency that is helpful for people for some reason. I'm not quite certain how that works. But I've been told that many times before when I used to work in office settings and in temp jobs, like answering the phone or something as a receptionist when I was younger. People on the other line would comment, "You have such a nice voice. I could listen to you all day." I'm like, "Oh, thank you." I never really thought much of it because if I ever heard myself on an answering machine back in the old days when there were answering machines, I would cringe and I'd hit delete right away or like run from the room. And even when you're editing, well, you don't do the edits anymore, but when you used to edit our shows, I would say, put on the headphones or turn down the volume. And I would like go running downstairs or as far away as I could. But just goes to show what you think is the worst aspect of you or as a weakness is really a strength.
It was
Doesn't
cool.
mean I'll start listening to myself.
It was cool that they brought out your voice. And going back to the dynamic duo and the two of us together, they spoke for a minute about coaching, and I think we could take a liberal interpretation and meaning behind the mic as well. But they said that you have a lot to offer from a feminine perspective that people really want to hear that I may not be able to give coming from the male perspective.
It's interesting. I wonder if I don't recognize that. Well, there are probably many reasons why I don't recognize that in myself. But I was wondering if part of that is because growing up, I'm conditioned to recognize masculine strength. I mean, I think the culture in general recognizes masculine strength, but feminine strength is a little unclear. When I see a strong woman, like one that's really embraced the divine feminine energy, I recognize it. I'm like, that's what I want. But I don't think that I've really sat down and integrated that. Like, what is it about that woman that I really admire? But one of them, I would say, the first one that comes to mind is when I was watching an interview with Dr. Christian Northrup and Oprah. And I was really impressed by how Dr. Christian Northrup was holding her space with Oprah. I mean, they were like equals. And there was nothing like young about it. So I would say, if you're curious, just go on YouTube and Google Dr. Christian Northrup and Oprah, and you'll get an idea of what I mean.
And by young, you're saying masculine, over the top strength, forceful. What's interesting going into this,
Yeah. I mean, it was just really, it was genuine. It wasn't, a lot of times, I think women, especially ones that have had to work in the corporate world and have successfully rised into the executive positions, become more masculine in order to fit in. Not all. I'm sure there are many women in those ranks who have done an amazing job of balancing both sides.
what's cool is if we listen to, and I don't have the exact words, I think it was pretty much the last thing the guide said through Kim for you was to embrace that feminine side of yourself and to even bring that to the forefront more.
Yeah, that was really interesting. I haven't been aware of suppressing it or not acknowledging it. I think it simply means that there's more for me to learn about it. And I'm doing more automatic writing now. Mm-hmm. So I think that helps. And I just started automatic writing to our baby spirit for the first time this morning.
So one of the other things, and I guess we're going to jump all over the place here, but going to the Kim Russo interview, she said that behind me were all of the Asian guides, and then she said there was is it a baby or a young person? What did she say? Do you remember the exact words?
She said there was a little Asian girl.
Yeah.
I'm not sure at this point she knew that I'm Asian.
No, she didn't know that yet.
And she said that this would be our daughter.
In fact, she
is our daughter.
She said after that, I'm not sure if it's going to be your child by birth or by adoption, because she didn't know that you're Asian.
I thought that was really neat because I've actually had visions of her, of our little girl. And most recently, just a week ago, I went to a float spa. At float spas, they have these pods that are filled with water and 1,000 pounds of Epsom salt. And you basically get into these pods and there's a cover. You can close it or you can leave it open. But if you want more sensory deprivation, then you close the pod all the way. There are lights inside which you can change to different colors, or you can turn them off. I turned the lights off. There's also a sound system, so you can play meditation music, but I turned that off too because I wanted to be as sensory deprived as possible. And I would say I was in sort of a hypnagogic meditative state. I was half awake, half asleep. And nothing extraordinary happened because I meditate a lot, so I have that experience a lot. The one thing that happened was at one point I had this vision of a little girl with pigtails. And I thought to myself, she looks a little bit like your sister, Elisa, as a little girl, but not quite. And she had big eyes. And then I saw a little boy next to her, smaller. And that's it. But I've had visions of her for many years now.
And so to segue from here, because she then said you'd have two and either back to back or twins or something like that. But you have it's a funny way to put it, but you have been working on a project that you feel inspired, the Inspire Nation Babies Project.
Yeah, this project has been on my mind for years. I was just looking at Amazon because you can see when you ordered books. You can see when you ordered any of your products, right? And I saw that I ordered this book called Spirit Babies back in 2013 or 14. And I felt a calling back then to do some some project around conscious conception and mindful pregnancy. And I wanted to start doing the research back then because I wanted to start trying to conceive back then. But a lot of things were happening back then that didn't make it ideal conditions. You had an accident, I got sick, blah, blah, blah. And since we moved here, I felt like, I really feel like the time's going to be soon. And then suddenly I'm like, why didn't I start doing this research sooner? Why haven't I been reading these books sooner? Like, why haven't I been changing everything about how I'm living? Like, I should be eating a cleaner diet now. I should be exercising more. I should be meditating more, blah, blah, blah. And I think that's what Kim was referring to when she said, you don't need all this training, right? You just need to jump in and learn on the go.
Yeah, and I think she was referring to, in a sense, getting that project off the ground, because you've wanted to do interviews. In a sense, you want a second show. And that second show is to help people down this road themselves as you're going down this road.
Yeah. And I think it'll be useful for people to hear about all the insecurities and I suppose how I've resolved those insecurities or moved past them or grown. And it's exciting. I was really excited to hear her reading because it's definitely given me that extra
oomph.
That extra spark.
I think it's really cool because she didn't know you. She didn't know anything about you. Okay, she may have seen that you're Asian online, but she didn't know a darn thing unless she's listened to a whole bunch of episodes.
And yeah, I'm sure she has all the time in the world to go through every single episode that we've recorded, so she knew everything about us.
And then dive right in. So let's say, is there anything else you want to say about Inspire Nation Babies before I go to the chair?
So I think that'll be the name of the podcast. And we also have the URL mindfullypregnant.com. So that'll probably be where I start a blog as well. And yeah, I mean, the small self goes, well, you should really, read more books and know what you're talking about more before you start blogging. But I'm starting to see that I should just start blogging about what I'm going through right now.
That's probably the most helpful for people.
Yeah, so Michael's going to help me get that website up.
Oh my gosh. Oh, you can't see blush through audio. Yes, I will help. Whatever need you have, whatever help you need, I'm going to help you on this because I am really excited to see you. Well, first off, I see this as a calling for you. I see this as a vision. I see you as, and I've always said this, an equal or beyond as far as an author, as far as a speaker, as far as a guide and a teacher. And I've seen you as a spiritual elder, an auntie or a grandma for years and years, both literally, figuratively, in visions, the works. And so I'm so excited for you for this project. No pressure. But I also know that getting you into the creative process and getting you into the flow, and this is something that's been a calling for you, it flips a whole lot of switches on for you. And we have no idea where that's going to take you.
Yeah, I don't even try to envision where it's going to take me. I think not trying leaves me more open to whatever grander plan there is that I could never imagine or come up with on my own. So I'm excited too. And I'm sure when it comes down to starting the interviews because we're going to interview experts on conscious conception and really cool topics like babies or toddlers having prenatal memories or memories of their life before they were in the womb, and then memories in the womb, and yeah.
Cool stuff. I'm excited for it. Um, there's the linear part of my brain that's going logistics. How do we do it? Quiet,
Yeah, I know. As if
quiet.
one podcast wasn't enough.
But it's important, and I like that you're willing to share. And I think putting yourself out there before you're quote ready is more resonance with people. It's like we've had emails come in from people who haven't dove into our money shows, who say, I want to hear a money show for somebody who hasn't made it or hasn't made it yet, somebody I can more relate to. And the people we've had on for money, they all started with nothing themselves and pulled themselves up. But hearing from the very beginning, from the inception, from pre-inception, pre-conception, and learning how you're learning on this journey, I think is really inspiring.
Yeah. And I think there are a lot of figures out there who portray like perfect motherhood, and maybe there's a handful of perfect mothers out there, right? I haven't met them. I think the vast majority are not perfect. And to have people out there who are authentic really helps. Because if you're shooting for perfection, it's kind of like when you look at the magazines and you see the models with the perfect bodies, you're like, oh, that'll never be me. If you see a perfect mother, you might think, oh, that'll never be me. Well, chances are they're not perfect. And the models, I mean, they struggle a lot too. A lot of them have eating disorders, and they often have a lot of insecurities as well. You've had a couple of guests on who are former models.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's they were very courageous to put themselves out there, but it was a huge challenge for them. It wasn't all what you saw on camera wasn't what was really going on.
Yeah.
So let's switch gears from there, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because I want to talk, maybe we'll talk about how do you segue from models. Let's segue somehow from models to perfect model chairs.
Oh.
You like that segue?
Yeah. They're also far from perfect. Those kitchen chairs that I can see right behind the monitor here. So we were gifted with this beautiful distressed farm kitchen table. I guess that's like the style. And thank you, Marianne.
Thank you.
And it just brings me so much joy every time I walk past it, because even though it's just stressed, it's got a very like soft feel to it. It's like cream colored on top and a very, very faded teal bottom. The legs are teal. And it needed kitchen chairs. And this was a couple weeks ago now. I was thinking, how am I going to have the time to go to all those consignment shops and find the right set of kitchen chairs? Don't even know what kind of chairs I want. I've never really given this any thought, because you and I, as you've mentioned in shows at CJ, have never owned a kitchen table together. This
is admittedly true, and quite
so,
embarrassingly.
Of course, we never had kitchen chairs. And then one of our other friends, another angel in our life, Peggy, was out shopping for her own needs, and she came across a set of 4 vintage farm kitchen chairs. And she got them for a steal of a deal, I think $15, and she gifted those to us.
Thank you, Peggy.
while painting them, I discovered there's a stamp on the bottom. They were made in 1983.
So just three
So,
years newer than you.
so they must have been in a basement or in a garage for a long time because they're really dusty. There were spider webs. The paint was chipping off the legs. They were dark brown color, and they definitely didn't. Well, they could have matched the kitchen table, but they were just a little sad looking. And one of them had a cracked seat, so I had to glue that back together. So I thought, oh, fun project. I'll paint them. And I thought it'd be easy.
The painting itself, I think, was easy relatively for you.
Yeah, it's got a lot of spindles and on the back side, and they're not that easy to paint and keep neat. But I went over to Lowe's and I picked out some what's called chalk paint, and that's the kind of paint that you use if you want the easiest way to distress paint. And took me a while to pick out the colors, and I was sending you emails to get your opinion, but you weren't responding. So I came home with two colors, a teal and white. And I remember sitting there with the paint cans and the brushes, and I was noticing this very subtle fear, this like trepidation about what if I had picked the wrong colors? And I realized I kind of have that fear about almost every new thing that I do. I have that fear before I go to my first meditation class somewhere. I went to this dance meditation class this past Wednesday. And when I was waiting to get picked up, I was like, what am I scared of? I'm just going to meet like-minded people. Maybe I'm scared of people not liking me, or maybe I'm scared I don't know. I think it's just this unknown that's just scary. I think the unknown is always just a little scary. And so it's just interesting to notice. So I started painting these chairs, and as soon as the teal went on the chair, I'm like, oh God, that's the wrong color. I'm like, no, I did pick the wrong color. And then my mind's going, you did this because you thought Michael would like this color better. You weren't, and then I started like criticizing myself for trying to please somebody else instead of myself. And I'm thinking, oh, this is going to clash with the table because this teal it's a cool teal, and the table is a warm color. And I'm like, well, let's just keep painting, and maybe there's a way to warm up the color later. And what were you witnessing, Michael?
A creative catastrophic meltdown going on in the living room around the chairs.
I mean, I was
and I was being as loving and supportive and keeping my distance as best as I could.
So I finished applying the paint, and then I got to the step where you start distressing the furniture. You take a piece of sandpaper, and you start sanding away the areas of the furniture where they would normally have wear and tear over the years. So the edges, and maybe where a person sits, things like that. And I'm like, okay, this will make it look better because then it'll make it less bright. And then I'm like having fun sanding away, right? And then I stop and I step back, and I'm like, oh my God, I sanded too much off. It's too distressed. And it was like that, like every time I worked on the chairs, it was like back and forth, and I started thinking to myself, I suck at this. And I'm like, and then I said it to you. I'm like, Michael, I'm not supposed to suck at this. I don't usually suck at this. And I'm like, and I'm not like able to focus on work right now either. Maybe because it was still just 2 weeks after we moved here. I'm like, I can't get anything done. I'm sucking at everything. What's going on? I'm like, this isn't me. And of course, there's another part of me that's saying, well, it never was really you. That's your small self that was maybe good or not good at something, but this does not define you. But it was, I mean, I was definitely extremely frustrated and angry. And at the same time, there was also a part of me that was kind of laughing at the whole scene.
And I was excited. I could see what's going on behind the scenes to understand this is a great thing, that this creative angst, this creative process, the trauma that you're going through is actually incredibly helpful for you. So I'm wanting to say, in a sense, congratulations for going what you're going through, but that would be a really bad thing to say at that time.
I mean, it was every time. Well, at one point, there was just one chair painted, and then there were two. But every time I walked past them, I'd cringe.
Or hop up and down.
I had to take a step back for a couple of days and get grounded. So to make sure that I made decisions that were sound. And yeah, eventually, I kept taking steps forward, and they're in a much better state now. All four are painted. They're all slightly different because they all have little variations that I'm testing with, and I'm thinking over time, the one style will reveal itself to me.
I
I'll
like
start
it.
gravitating towards one of the chairs. Um, but I thought this is just such a good example of how every project in our lives feels. This is on a much smaller scale. There's less money at stake, $50 in paint or whatever. They're quite time consuming. But with everything we're doing with our lives, like the YouTube channel we mentioned, and then when we start a new podcast, there's a lot of trial and error, but you just keep stepping forward.
And you're doing it.
Yeah.
Woohoo!
And I'm trying to laugh about it.
So we've got just a little time left. You had two topics that you wanted to cover. I'm not sure if there's time for both of them, but I'll give them to you and take them wherever you want, which is you're turning into a bit of a social butterfly, and you're becoming the neighborhood pet healer, in a sense, the Dr. Doolittle of this corner of Emerald Isle.
Yeah, so I have a book of intentions that I write in. I try and write in every day. And a few weeks back, before we moved here, I wrote, I wanted to be a social butterfly in Emerald Isle because I'd been hibernating for a couple of years in New Jersey, getting better. And I thought moving down here would be a time for me to step out and be with people again. And there was I think 2 days where I had like over 6 events going on. 7?
You counted for me 7.
Yeah. And, that was exhausting. And I started to question whether or not I really wanted to be a social butterfly. So it's interesting, what you ask for really is what you get.
How have you felt putting yourself out there?
Well, so I'll make a plan, right? And it sounds so exciting at the time, such a good idea. And then like the hour or so before the event is supposed to take place, I'm always like, oh man, I wish I hadn't made that plan. I kind of just want to like stay home and cuddle with the kitties and be comfortable because that's when like the fears and the insecurities start to come up in me. And I haven't read the book yet, but there's a book out there called The 5 Second Rule. Actually, there's a TED Talk, and I want to pitch this woman. I think her name is Mel Robbins, and I think the general takeaway from the TED Talk and the book is that you only give yourself 5 seconds to make a decision, and then you stick with it, because after those 5 seconds, your mind starts playing the programming that makes that decision or idea sound really scary and like a bad idea. I'm I'm trying to stick to those decisions and those obligations that I make and not back out later on when the insecurities start to rise up.
Cool. Maybe that's why when you ask me a question, you're like, quick, give me the this. What's your first?
I'm like, blah, 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 yes or no, now.
So do you want to go from social butterflies real quickly on your healing work you've been doing around Emerald Isle?
Oh, yeah. So a few years ago, I told you, Michael, how cool would it be if I could just heal people? And it just seems like such a gratifying thing to do. And I don't know that I wanted to do it for a career or whatever. But I think it was a time where I wasn't really quite sure what I wanted to do with my life. This is when we were still back on Maui, probably about 4 years ago. And I started to experiment with one of our kitties a couple years ago. And then I started to make it a regular thing with Meow Meow, also known as Sir Meowsers, when we were in New Jersey, and I was spending a lot of time in bed getting better. So was Meowsers. And then we got here, and I thought, well, I think it's time to explore this even more. And people started mentioning how their pets weren't doing that well. And I thought, and I was really scared to do this, but I stepped out of my comfort zone and I offered my services. I'm not charging because at this point, okay, so I was about to say, I don't know how effective I am. That is true, but I do know that I am having an effect. I don't know how much, but it's starting to reveal itself.
Thank you, our editor, Misha, and his leg.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so it's not just pets. So 2 nights ago, I don't know how he feels about us talking about him, but I guess he can edit this out.
It's your choice, Misha.
Our editor, Misha, has been having trouble sleeping because he's been having a lot of pain in his leg from an injury. And I thought, well, we've heard about distance healing. Richard Gordon talked about it in his books and in interviews. He's the author of Quantum Touch, and he was on the show. And I've also heard it from other healers, too. So I thought, this time and space thing, it's just, we're told that it's not real, and that love can travel anywhere through any dimension. And that's really the basis for, at least as far as my understanding goes, that love is the basis for the healing energy. That's what makes it go for me. I thought, well, why shouldn't I be able to do distance healing? And so I started working on his leg.
And you got an email saying it's feeling much better.
I did. Yeah. Which is encouraging. So I'll keep working on it.
All right. So, and that's another area you're stepping outside your comfort zone. So bringing things full circle today, any last words of wisdom you want to share with people for maybe stepping outside of their comfort zones?
I would say that there are probably There are probably a lot of hidden programs or thoughts running in the background that stop people from stepping out of their comfort zone that they're not even aware of. And I think becoming aware of them is the first step. And then you can decide whether or not that's a reasonable reason not to step out of your comfort zone. And the second thing is when your heart leaps for something and you have this moment that you really want to do something, it sounds really exciting, do it. And if it's something that's not going to happen for a few days or weeks or months, commit to doing it right then and there. And remember, once that event comes up, how much you were excited about in that moment when you committed to it, and just follow through. Don't let all the nagging, insecure thoughts dissuade you.
I like it.
Because, for instance, after I heard Kim Russo's interview and the reading, I'm like, yes, it's time to get back on the mic and start recording shows again. And then, the hour leading up to recording this show, I'm starting to feel really insecure and scared. And then I feel my body shrinking. And I'm like, Michael.
Can we do some emotion code on me, please?
Which we didn't, but we should.
Mm-hmm. We will. But you did it. Okay. How'd you do it?
I remember that I committed.
The C word.
Yeah. And, okay, and there's pressure now. Because Kim, lovely Kim, put it out there for the whole world. And I'm starting to believe, I guess, not entirely, but I'm starting to believe that people are counting on it. Counting on me. I don't want to let people down.
I think this one's been a long time coming. I could see it in you from the beginning. You could see it in yourself, but you tried to keep it quiet. And I think to take it globally, we all have things that others are counting on, that we feel pulled and called to, but we keep ourselves small rather than stepping into the greatness we're capable of. So, a huge congratulations for getting back on the mic today and stepping forward into your true self.
Thank you. And thank you for entertaining me and using the Japanese bobtail cat background.
Kitty power. All right. For everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler and
Jessica Lee
saying, be well, have fun, step way outside your comfort zone, and shine bright. Woohoo! Awesome job, Pookie.
You said Pookie.
I did. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like below. Also, leave your comments. Have some real fun with it. Subscribe to our channel where you're going to get more great videos, more interviews coming up. And check out our website, inspirenationshow.com. That's where you'll find tips, blogs, information, videos you won't find anywhere else, and useful and helpful resources to really help you kickstart your life and to shine bright. Thanks so much again. Thank you for your support. Like, comment, subscribe. See the website. Thanks so much and have fun. Of course, shine bright. Woohoo!